of September first arrived with that peculiar quality of light that exists only at summer's end, golden and tentative, as though autumn itself was testing the waters before fully committing to its arrival. At King's Cross Station, the usual rhythm of Friday travelers moved through the grand concourse in their predictable patterns, completely unaware that between platforms 9 and 10, an entirely different reality was preparing to unfold. Lily Moon Potter stood motionless before the barrier, her trolley suddenly feeling as though it had been charmed to weigh twice what it should. The brick wall loomed before her, solid and impossibly ordinary, mocking her with its mundane appearance. For one crystalline moment of pure terror, she wondered if perhaps the letter had been a mistake, if magic itself had looked at her and decided she wasn't quite ready after all. "It never gets easier, you know," came her mother's voice, warm and understanding. Ginny Potter knelt beside her youngest daughter, her hand gentle on Lily's shoulder. "That moment before you walk through, it's terrifying every single time. I still get butterflies, even now." "But you played professional Quidditch," Lily protested, her voice smaller than she'd intended. "You've flown through goals with bludgers aimed at your head. How can a wall be scary after that?" "Because walls don't move," Ginny replied with a knowing smile. "And because what's on the other side matters more than any Quidditch match ever did. This is your beginning, Lily. It's allowed to be frightening." Harry Potter appeared on Lily's other side, and the crowd seemed to part instinctively around them, though whether from recognition or simple coincidence, Lily couldn't tell. Her father's presence had that effect, that subtle weight of history that followed him wherever he went. "Your brothers made it look easy," Harry said, his green eyes the same shade as Lily's own crinkling at the corners. "James practically ran through like he was chasing the snitch and Albus. Well, Albus was nervous too, but he'd never admit it now. They had each other," Lily said quietly. "James had friends waiting. Albus had Rose and Hugo. I'm going alone." "You're going first," Ginny corrected gently. "There's a difference. Being first means you get to define yourself without anyone else's expectations hanging over you. Your brothers had to follow in footsteps. You get to make your own path." The word settled something in Lily's chest, though the fear remained, a living thing coiled beneath her ribs. She gripped her trolley tighter, feeling the solidity of the metal beneath her palms, and looked at the barrier one more time. "What if I end up in Hufflepuff?" She blurted out, the worry that had kept her awake for weeks finally escaping. "Or Slytherin? Everyone expects me to be in Gryffindor like you and Dad and James and Albus and basically everyone in our entire family going back. Forever." Harry and Ginny exchanged a look, one of those silent parent conversations that Lily had never quite learned to interpret. "Then you'd be in Hufflepuff or Slytherin," Harry said simply, "and we'd be proud of you regardless. The Sorting Hat sees things in us that we don't always see in ourselves. Trust it. But more importantly," Ginny added, her voice taking on that fierce quality it got when she was making a point, "trust yourself. The hat takes your choice into account, Lily. It always has. You have more say in this than you think." Lily took a deep breath, squared her shoulders, and pushed her trolley forward. The sensation was exactly as her brothers had described, and nothing like it at all. A moment of cool pressure, a heartbeat of absolute darkness. And then she was through platform 9 3/4 exploded into existence around her. The Hogwarts Express stood magnificent and impossible, its scarlet paint gleaming in the morning light, steam billowing from its chimney in great white plumes that smelled of coal and promise. The platform teemed with life families clustered in emotional knots, trunks being loaded by hurried students, owls hooting their displeasure at being caged, and everywhere, the electric buzz of anticipation that came with September 1st. There she is. James's voice carried across the platform, and Lily spotted her oldest brother waving enthusiastically from near one of the carriages. He'd grown again over the summer 5th year, had done something to his build that made him look more like their father than ever. Thought maybe you chickened out, Lils. Shut it, James, Lily called back, but without heat. The sheer overwhelming presence of it all, the train, the crowd, the reality of it left little room for sibling rivalry. Albus appeared beside James, more reserved, but smiling. 3rd year suited him. He'd finally grown into the confidence that had eluded him during his 1st year. Ignore him. You look terrified. That's completely normal. I'm not terrified, Lily lied. And both her brothers laughed. Their parents emerged through the barrier behind her, bringing with them the comfortable chaos of the Potter family. Ginny immediately began fussing with Lily's hair, which had developed an unfortunate tendency to stick up at odd angles, while Harry engaged in the eternal struggle of loading a trunk onto the train. Let me help with that. Harry. The voice was familiar and warm. Ron Weasley had arrived with his own family in tow. Hermione, looking characteristically organized despite the chaos, and their daughter Rose looking mutinous about something. Uncle Ron. Lily brightened immediately. Ron Weasley had always been her favorite uncle, primarily because he had no qualms about sneaking her sweets when her parents weren't looking. There's my favorite niece, Ron said, pulling her into a hug that lifted her off her feet. Ready to show Hogwarts what a proper Potter can do. I'm your only niece, Lily pointed out. Rose doesn't count as yours. Excuse me, Rose said, appearing at her father's elbow with her arms crossed. I absolutely count. You're at Hogwarts already, Lily replied. You don't count as a new student. That's different. Rose, who had spent 2 years in Ravenclaw Tower, proving that intelligence ran deep in the Granger Weasley line, simply rolled her eyes. Fine, you can be the favorite niece for exactly 1 day. After that, the position returns to me. Where's Hugo? Lily asked, looking around for her cousin. Already on the train, Hermione said, consulting her watch with the precision of someone who had scheduled the morning down to the minute. He wanted to secure a good compartment. 3rd years are very particular about these things, apparently. The platform was growing more crowded now, the 11 o'clock departure approaching with inexorable certainty. Parents clutched their children, some crying openly, others maintaining stiff upper lips that fooled no one. A group of older students 7th years. Lily guest laughed by one of the carriage doors, their ease marking them as people who'd done this so many times it had become routine. Lily Potter. The voice was soft, uncertain, and came from behind her. Lily turned to find a girl about her age standing alone, her trunk beside her. The girl had dark skin and tightly coiled hair, pulled back in an elaborate pattern of braids, and her robes brand new, like Lily's, marked her as another 1st year. Yes? Lily replied, trying not to sound too much like her brother James when he was being superior. I'm Amara Zabini, the girl said, and Lily saw her chin lift slightly, as though expecting a reaction. My father went to school with yours. I thought, well, I wanted to introduce myself before, you know. Lily did know. The name Zabini carried weight in wizarding circles, not the dark. Heavy weight of names like Malfoy or Lestrange, but weight nonetheless. Blaise Zabini had been a Slytherin in her father's year, had straddled the line between neutrality and dark magic during the war, had ultimately chosen not to fight, but not to help either. The adults had noticed. Lily saw her father's expression shift into something complicated, saw Uncle Ron's jaw tighten, saw Hermione's analytical gaze sharpen. But it was her mother who spoke first. Zabini, Ginny said, and her voice held only warmth. Is your father here? No, ma'am, Amara replied, her posture very straight. He had business at the ministry. My mother brought me, but well, she doesn't do well in crowds. She's waiting by the barrier. Then you're on your own for this, Ginny observed. It wasn't a question. Yes, ma'am. Lily watched her mother's expression transform into something fierce and protective, the look that usually preceded her mother doing. Something that would embarrass Lily's brothers, but that Lily secretly loved. Well, that won't do at all, Ginny declared. Lily, introduce Amara to the train etiquette, will you? Show her where to find a good compartment. First years should stick together. Amara blinked, clearly not having expected this. Thank you, Mrs. Potter. That's very kind, but I don't want to impose. Not an imposition, Harry interrupted, and Lily saw him exchange another of those silent conversations with her mother. If you're on your own, you might as well be on your own together. That's what Lily needs to. Dad, Lily protested, feeling her cheeks heat. What? It's true. You were just worrying about going alone. Harry smiled at both girls. Problem solved. You're not alone anymore. Lily looked at Amara, who looked back with an expression that suggested she was just as mortified by their parents' interference as Lily was. Something about that shared embarrassment broke the ice. Come on, Lily said, making a decision. Let's get our trunks loaded before all the good compartments are taken. James says the middle carriages get too crowded, and the back ones are where the seventh years claim territory. The front, then? Amara suggested. The front, Lily agreed. They wrestled their trunks toward the train with the determined inefficiency of 11-year-olds who hadn't quite figured out leverage yet. A helpful sixth year took pity on them and used a levitation charm to hoist the trunks into the luggage compartment, earning their eternal gratitude. The corridor inside the train was narrow and already filling with students, older ones greeting friends they hadn't seen all summer, comparing tans and growth spurts, laughing at private jokes that Lily couldn't understand. She and Amara pressed themselves against the wall to let a group of fourth years pass, then continued toward the front of the train. Here, Amara said, finding an empty compartment near the very front. This should work. They filed in and claimed their seats, Lily, by the window facing forward, Amara across from her. For a moment, they simply looked at each other, two 11-year-olds thrown together by circumstance and parental intervention, unsure of what came next. Your father really is Harry Potter, Amara said finally. It wasn't quite a question. Yeah, Lily replied. But mostly he's just Dad. He makes terrible jokes and burns breakfast and makes me practice defensive spells. until I want to hex him. The famous part is just background noise. My father says your father could have sent him to Azkaban after the war, Amara said quietly. Says Harry Potter testified on behalf of several Slytherins who'd been neutral. Says that's the only reason some families weren't destroyed. Lily didn't know what to say to that. The war was history to her, stories told in hushed voices, names carved on memorials. The occasional nightmare that woke her father in the middle of the night. She knew it had been terrible, knew people had died, knew the divide between the houses had been deeper than any first year could truly understand. But it felt distant, like something that had happened to different people in a different world. He tries to be fair, Lily said finally. Dad, I mean. He says holding grudges just makes the pain last longer. That's very wise, Amara offered. It's very Dad, Lily corrected. He probably read it in a book Aunt Hermione gave him. They both laughed, and the tension in the compartment eased fractionally. The compartment door slid open again, and another girl poked her head in, this one with vibrant red hair and freckles that suggested Weasley blood. Mind if I join you? The girl asked. I'm Molly Weasley. Well, Molly Weasley II, technically. My mom is the first Molly Weasley, but everyone just calls me Molly anyway, because it's less confusing, even though it's actually more confusing when you think about it. She said all of this in one breath, and paused. Sorry, I talk a lot when I'm nervous. Dad says I get it from him, but Mom says I get it from Aunt Hermione. So really nobody knows where it comes from, except that it's definitely genetic. Lily grinned. Your Uncle Percy's daughter. Guilty, Molly said cheerfully, sliding into the compartment and taking the seat beside Amara. Which makes you Lily Potter. Which makes sense, because you look exactly like your mom did in all the old photos. And you must be ... She looked at Amara expectantly. Amara Zabini, Amara supplied. Brilliant. Nice to meet you both. Are we doing the whole first-year terror thing together? Or are we all pretending to be brave? Bit of both? Lily suggested. Perfect. That's exactly the right approach. Molly pulled out a paper bag that smelled suspiciously of chocolate. Want some? Mom packed enough for an army, which is pretty standard in our family. I think she forgets I'm only one person. They accepted the chocolate. Lily took a chocolate frog. Amara chose a cauldron cake, and the compartment began to feel less like a space occupied by strangers and more like the beginning of something that might become friendship. The platform outside was growing more chaotic as the departure time approached. Through the window, Lily could see her parents standing with Uncle Ron and Aunt Hermione, all of them watching the train with expressions that mixed pride and worry in equal measure. James and Albus had already boarded, disappeared into the depths of the train where their respective friend groups waited. Do you think the sorting hurts? Molly asked suddenly, her cheerful mask slipping to reveal genuine worry beneath. Like, I know it doesn't actually hurt, but does it feel weird? Having a hat in your head? My dad said it's like having someone very wise whisper in your ear, Lily offered. Said it sees things in you that you don't always see in yourself. My father said it's uncomfortable, but not painful, Amara added. Though he also said the waiting is worse than the actual sorting. How long does it take? Molly wondered. Depends on the person, Lily said, remembering her father's stories. Some people are sorted immediately. Others take longer. Dad says the longest sorting in recent history was nearly 5 minutes. 5 minutes! Molly looked horrified. That's an eternity with the whole school watching. Better than being sorted immediately into somewhere you don't want to be, Amara pointed out. True, Molly considered this. Which house do you want? The question hung in the air, heavier than it should have been. Lily felt the weight of it, the way it pulled at all her secret hopes and fears. Ravenclaw? Amara said firmly. My mother was Ravenclaw. She says intelligence and wisdom are gifts that no one can take away from you. Plus, their common room is supposed to have the best views in the castle. Hufflepuff, Molly declared with surprising conviction. Everyone expects me to be Ravenclaw like Dad was, or Gryffindor like most of the family. But I want Hufflepuff. They value loyalty and hard work and being kind to people. That seems more important than being brave or clever. Both girls looked at Lily expectantly. I don't know, Lily admitted, and it felt like a confession. Everyone expects Gryffindor. My whole family is Gryffindor. But I'm not sure that's who I am. I'm not brave like James or determined like Albus. I'm just... That's allowed, Amara said quietly. Being just you is allowed. Besides, Molly added, any house would be lucky to have you. That's what my dad says about sorting the houses don't define us. We define them. The train whistle blew a long, clear note that meant 5 minutes to departure. Outside, the farewells grew more urgent. Lily saw her mother wipe at her eyes, saw her father pull Ginny close. She felt an unexpected surge of homesickness for a home she hadn't even left yet. The compartment door opened one more time, and a boy stuck his head in small for 11, with messy brown hair and glasses that kept sliding down his nose. Sorry, is there room? He asked. Everywhere else seems full. Come in, Lily said, making the decision quickly. I'm Lily. This is Amara. And that's Molly. Edmund, the boy replied, sliding into the seat beside Molly. Edmund Longbottom. Professor Longbottom's son. Which is going to be really weird when we have herbology. I just know it. Your dad teaches at Hogwarts? Molly asked, her eyes widening. Yeah, has been for years. It's great except for the part where everyone expects me to be brilliant at plants, which I'm absolutely not. I kill everything I touch. Mom says I've got my grandmother's gift for magical theory, and my father's gift for catastrophe, which seems like the worst possible combination. They laughed, and just like that, their little group was complete. 4 first years who'd been thrown together by chance, by parental interference, by the simple act of choosing a compartment near the front of the train. The final whistle blew. The train lurched into motion with a great hiss of steam and a judder that made them all grab their seats. Through the window, Lily watched the platform begin to slide away, her parents waiting, her mother definitely crying now, her father's arm around her. The crowd of parents grew smaller. The station began to recede, and then they were through the barrier and out into mundane London, the magical world falling away behind them. We're really going, Molly breathed. We're really going, Lily echoed, and felt something in her chest loosen and soar simultaneously. The compartment settled into a comfortable, quiet as London gave way to suburbs to countryside. Green fields rolled past the window, dotted with sheep and the occasional farmhouse. The September sun was warm through the glass, and the gentle rocking of the train created a rhythm that was almost hypnotic. Edmund pulled out a book something dense about magical theory and was immediately absorbed. Molly produced a pack of exploding snack cards and tried to convince Amara to play with limited success. Lily simply watched the countryside slide past and tried to imagine what waited for them at the end of this journey. A trolley which came by around noon, and they loaded up on sweets with the enthusiasm of children who'd been given permission to make their own choices. Bertie Bott's every flavor beans proved both entertaining and disgusting. Edmund got vomit, Molly got grass, Amara got something that might have been strawberry or might have been soap, and Lily got black pepper and nearly sneezed herself off her seat. "These are horrifying," Amara declared, and immediately ate another one. "Why are these popular?" "The mystery," Edmund said, not looking up from his book. "People like gambling, even when the stakes are just getting a disgusting bean." "That's surprisingly philosophical for someone reading about fungal propagation," Molly observed, craning her neck to see Edmund's book. "It's actually about the theoretical applications of herbology to defensive magic," Edmund corrected mildly. "But fungal propagation comes up a lot. Apparently spores can be weaponized." "That's disturbing," Lily said. "That's Professor Longbottom for you. He makes plants sound terrifying." The afternoon wore on. The landscape outside grew wilder, less tamed. They were in the north now, heading toward Scotland, and the land seemed to reflect the change, more dramatic, more ancient, more magical somehow, even though they were still technically in the Muggle world. Other students passed their compartment periodically. A group of third-year Hufflepuffs waved at them cheerfully. A stern-looking Ravenclaw prefect checked that they weren't causing trouble. James stuck his head in once to make sure Lily hadn't fallen off the train, earned himself a thrown chocolate frog for his concern, and departed laughing. "Your brother seems nice," Amara offered diplomatically after James left. "He's a nightmare," Lily corrected. "But yeah, he's all right. Most of the time." As the sun began its descent toward the horizon, painting the sky in shades of amber and rose, a fifth-year prefect passed through the train, announcing that they should change into their robes. The castle was approaching. They took turns stepping into the corridor to change, modest and awkward in the way of 11-year-olds still figuring out their bodies. When they were all back in the compartment, dressed in their plain black robes with no house colors yet to mark them, Lily felt both more and less herself. The robes were a costume, but one she might grow into, a promise of who she could become. "How long until we get there?" Molly asked, practically bouncing in her seat with nervous energy. "Soon," Edmund replied, finally setting aside his book. He'd been quiet for most of the journey, but now he looked as anxious as the rest of them. "Dad says you can see the castle from the train for miles before you actually arrive. Says it's one of the most amazing sights in the wizarding world." "Your dad would know," Amara pointed out. "He's been seeing it for years. Longer than that. He was a student here too, same year as your parents," Edmund said to Lily. "Mom loves telling stories about their school days. Says they were always getting into trouble, but always for the right reasons." "My dad says the same thing," Lily admitted, though Mom usually adds that right reasons is a generous interpretation. The train began to slow, and the energy in the corridor outside their compartment changed. Voices rose with excitement and nervousness. People pressed their faces to windows, trying to catch first glimpses of the castle. And then, as the train rounded a bend, there it was, Hogwarts Castle rose from the mountainside like something from a dream, impossible and ancient and utterly magnificent. Towers reached toward the darkening sky. Hundreds of windows glowed with warm light, and the whole structure seemed to pulse with magic. It was bigger than Lily had imagined. More real, more present, more everything. Merlin, Amara breathed. It's massive, Molly whispered. It's home, Edmund said quietly. And something in his voice made them all look at him. Sorry, that's what my dad always says. Hogwarts is home. I never really understood what he meant until just now. The train slowed further, the castle growing larger with every passing moment. Lily felt her heart hammering against her ribs, felt the weight of anticipation pressing down on her chest. This was it. The moment everything changed. The Hogwarts Express released the final, triumphant whistle as it pulled into Hogsmeade Station, and 4 first-year students sat in their compartment, barely breathing, watching their futures approach with every turn of the wheels. The journey was ending. The adventure was about to begin, and somewhere in the castle waiting for them, a very old hat was preparing to see into their hearts and tell them who they might become. The platform at Hogsmeade Station was smaller than King's, cross, but somehow more magical, literally so, given the lanterns floating in midair without any visible means of support. The September night had fallen completely now, and stars wheeled overhead in patterns that seemed almost too perfect to be natural. First years. First years over here. The voice that boomed across the platform belonged to a man so large he made everyone else look like children by comparison. Rubius Hagrid, keeper of keys and grounds at Hogwarts, stood head and shoulders above the crowd, his wild hair and beard catching the lantern light like a storm cloud touched by lightning. Lily had known Hagrid her entire life. He was practically family, appearing at every major Potter family event with gifts that were either wonderful or terrifying, depending on your perspective. But seeing him here, in his official capacity, transformed him somehow into something more than just Uncle Hagrid who brought dubious creatures to Christmas dinner. Lils? Hagrid's face split into an enormous grin when he spotted her. There ya are. And who've ya got with ya? Amara Zabini, Molly Weasley, and Edmund Longbottom. Lily introduced them quickly, feeling dozens of eyes turn their way. Being singled out by Hagrid was both comforting and mortifying. Zabini, eh? Hagrid's expression flickered with something complicated memory, perhaps, or old wariness. But his voice remained warm. Known ya, father, I have. And Molly Weasley, another Weasley? Your family keeps growing, don't it? And Edmund? Hagrid's grin widened. Neville's boy. He'll be right chuffed to see. Yeah. Brilliant man, your father. Saved us all more times than I can count. Edmund's ears turned red, but he smiled. Right then, Hagrid raised his voice again, addressing the crowd of first years, maybe 40 of them, all looking equally terrified and excited. Follow me. Mind your step now. It's a bit dark and the path's none too wide. Keep together. They followed Hagrid down a steep, narrow path that seemed to descend into absolute darkness. The trees pressed close on either side, their branches forming a canopy that blocked out even the starlight. Lily stayed close to her new friends, grateful for their presence. Somewhere ahead, she could hear Hagrid's heavy footfalls and his cheerful voice, calling out warnings about tree roots and loose stones. And then the trees fell away. and Lily forgot how to breathe. The black lake spread before them, vast and dark and absolutely still. Its surface reflected the stars above, so perfectly that for a dizzying moment, Lily couldn't tell where the water ended and the sky began. And there, across the water, rising from the mountainside, like something from an ancient legend, was Hogwarts. The castle looked even more magnificent from here towers and battlements and soaring spires, all illuminated by hundreds of glowing windows. The whole structure seemed to float above the water, suspended between earth and heaven, between reality and dream. No more four to a boat. Hagrid called out, gesturing to a fleet of small wooden boats that bobbed gently at a dock. Each boat had a single lantern hanging from its prow, casting golden light across the dark water. Lily, Amara, Molly, and Edmund climbed into the nearest boat, the small craft rocking alarmingly under their weight. Once all the first years were settled, the boats began to move of their own accord, gliding across the glassy surface of the lake without oars or engines or any visible means of propulsion. "This is mental," Molly whispered, trailing her fingers in the water. "Don't do that," Edmund warned. "There's a giant squid in here. And merpeople. Dad says they're mostly friendly. But mostly isn't really reassuring when you're talking about creatures that could easily flip the boat." Molly snatched her hand back immediately. The flotilla of boats drifted toward the castle, and with each passing moment, Hogwarts grew larger, more imposing, more real. Lily could see individual stones in the walls now, could make out the different towers, could see the ancient magic that seemed to shimmer around the castle like heat haze. "Heads down," Hagrid's voice carried across the water. They ducked instinctively as the boats sailed through a curtain of ivy that concealed the entrance to an underground harbor. The sudden darkness was absolute, broken only by the lanterns on the boats. The sound of water lapping against stone echoed strangely in the enclosed space, and Lily felt a thrill of mingled fear and excitement course through her. The boats bumped gently against the dock, and Hagrid was there to help them out, his massive hands surprisingly gentle. Once all the first years were assembled wet, nervous, and trying very hard to look brave, Hagrid led them through a tunnel, carved into the rock itself. The tunnel opened onto a flight of stone steps, and at the top stood doors so large they seemed to have been built for giants. Ancient oak, carved with intricate patterns that shifted in the lantern light, radiating magic that even Lily's inexperienced senses could feel. Hagrid knocked 3 times, the sound like thunder, and the doors swung open. Professor Minerva McGonagall stood framed in the doorway, her tartan robes immaculate, her expression severe but not unkind. At 70-something, she remained the formidable presence that generations of students had learned to both respect and fear. "The first years, Professor," Hagrid said with obvious pride. "Thank you." Hagrid, McGonagall's Scottish accent seemed more pronounced in the formal setting. Her sharp eyes swept across the assembled students, cataloging each one with the precision of someone who'd been doing this for decades. Her gaze lingered fractionally longer on Lily recognition, perhaps, or simply noting another Potter entering the school. "Follow me, please." She turned and walked into the castle, and they followed like ducklings, too awed to do anything else. The entrance hall was magnificent, vast, and ancient, with a marble staircase leading to the upper floors and doors leading off in multiple directions. Torches burned in brackets along the walls, and the very stones seemed to hum with accumulated magic. But Professor McGonagall didn't lead them up the stairs or through any of the doors. Instead, she guided them to a small chamber off to the side, empty except for stone walls and nervous first years. "Welcome to Hogwarts," she said, and her voice carried easily through the space. "In a few moments, you will pass through those doors." She gestured to a set of double doors that must lead to the Great Hall and join your classmates. But first, you must be sorted into your houses. Lily felt her stomach drop. The 4 houses are Gryffindor, Hufflepuff, Ravenclaw, and Slytherin. Each house has its own proud history and has produced exceptional witches and wizards. While you are here, your house will be like your family. Your triumphs will earn it points. Your rule-breaking will lose points. At the end of the year, the house with the most points wins the House Cup. She paused, letting this information settle. The sorting ceremony will take place in front of the entire school. I suggest you make yourselves presentable. Her eyes landed on a boy whose robes were askew and a girl who had somehow gotten leaves in her hair during the boat ride. "Wait here quietly. I will return when we are ready for you." She swept from the chamber, leaving them in silence that lasted approximately 3 seconds before chaos erupted. "How do they sort us? Is it a test? My cousin said we have to duel a teacher." "That's ridiculous. They wouldn't. What if I'm not smart enough for Ravenclaw? What if I'm not brave enough for Gryffindor? I heard Slytherin still only takes pure bloods." "That's not true," Lily said sharply, and several heads turned toward her. She felt her cheeks heat, but pressed on. "They changed all that after the war. Slytherin accepts anyone the Sorting Hat chooses. House doesn't determine character. My dad says that all the time." "Easy for your dad to say," someone muttered. "He's Harry Potter. He was always going to be Gryffindor." "Actually," Edmund spoke up, his quiet voice somehow carrying through the chamber, "my dad says Harry Potter nearly got sorted into Slytherin. The Hat considered it seriously. But Harry asked for Gryffindor, and the Hat listened. It takes your choice into account." This caused a ripple of surprised murmurs. "How do you know that?" Molly asked. "My dad was there?" "Well, not there exactly, but he heard about it. It's sort of famous in certain circles. So we get a choice?" Amara's voice held a note of hope. "More like, the Hat considers what you want," Lily said, remembering her father's careful explanations. "It sees your qualities, your potential, but it also sees your desires. It tries to place you where you'll flourish, not where you'll be miserable." "That's actually quite reassuring," someone said, and several others nodded agreement. The chamber settled into a more contemplative silence. Lily found herself studying her fellow first years more carefully now. There were children of all types here, different backgrounds, different histories, different levels of terror written on their faces. Some looked confident, others looked ready to run, and most looked some complicated mixture of both. She spotted a boy with very neat robes standing alone, his expression unreadable. A girl with wild curly hair was bouncing slightly on her feet, either from excitement or nerves. 2 boys who had to be twins stood pressed close together as if drawing strength from each other's presence. Ghosts began drifting through the walls, and several first years yelped. A spectral figure in a ruff examined them critically before speaking. "New students? How delightful. I do hope some of you are bound for Ravenclaw. We could use some fresh blood." He paused, seeming to realize his choice of words. Metaphorically speaking, of course. He drifted away, chuckling to himself. Another ghost appeared, this one with his head hanging at a precarious angle, held on by what appeared to be a few stubborn tendons. First years. Wonderful. The ghost attempted what might have been a bow, and his head wobbled alarmingly. I'm nearly Headless Nick, Gryffindor House Ghost. Any of you hoping for Gryffindor? Several hands went up, including Lily's. Excellent. The sorting is nothing to worry about, truly. The hat's been doing this for 1,000 years. It knows what it's about. That's not as comforting as you think it is, Molly muttered. And several students laughed nervously. The double doors burst open, and Professor McGonagall stood framed in the entrance, backlit by golden light and the sound of hundreds of voices beyond. We're ready for you now, she said. Form a line and follow me. They scrambled into something resembling order, jostling for position. Lily found herself between Amara and Edmund, drawing courage from their presence. Her heart was hammering so hard, she was certain everyone could hear it. Whatever happens, Amara whispered. We're still friends. Whatever happens, Lily agreed. And Edmund nodded beside her. Professor McGonagall led them toward the doors, toward the light and sound and the hundreds of students waiting to see who they would become. This was it. The moment that would define everything. Lily squared her shoulders, lifted her chin, and walked forward into her future. The great hall stole every coherent thought from Lily's mind. She had heard about it, naturally. Her father spoke of it with a particular warmth, her mother with fond exasperation about teenage drama played out beneath floating candles. But hearing about something and experiencing it were entirely different creatures. The ceiling soared impossibly high, enchanted to mirror the night sky outside. Stars wheeled overhead in their ancient patterns, and wisps of cloud drifted past as though the roof had simply dissolved into the heavens themselves. Thousands of candles floated in midair, their flames steady and golden, casting dancing shadows across 4 long house tables that stretched the length of the hall. Lily's eyes found the Gryffindor table first. She couldn't help it. The older students wore their red and gold with easy pride, and she spotted both James and Albus immediately. James was grinning like an idiot and giving her an enthusiastic thumbs up. Albus, more reserved, offered a small, encouraging wave. The Ravenclaw table gleamed with blue and bronze. Students engaged in what appeared to be intense discussions even now. Hufflepuff's black and yellow looked warm and welcoming, the students there seeming more relaxed than their counterparts. And Slytherin green and silver sat with a particular kind of composure that might have been pride, or might have been defensiveness, or might have been both. At the far end of the hall, on a raised platform, the teacher's table stretched across the width of the room. Professor McGonagall took her place in the center, in a throne-like chair that marked her authority as headmistress. The other professors sat on either side. Lily recognized her godfather Neville Longbottom, who looked ready to explode with excitement, and Professor Flitwick, ancient and tiny, and several others whose names she'd have to learn. But what commanded her attention, what made her breath catch and her feet falter, was the stool sitting alone in front of the teacher's table. On it rested the sorting hat. It looked older than time itself, patched and frayed, stained and worn, one point flopping over like a wilted flower. It sat there innocuously, just a bit of cloth and magic. But Lily knew it held the power to determine her entire future. Professor McGonagall stood beside the stool, holding an ancient roll of parchment. The hall had fallen silent, hundreds of students watching the line of first years with expressions, ranging from encouraging to bored to hungry dinner, would come after the sorting. And the students whose surnames fell late in the alphabet would have to wait. "When I call your name," McGonagall announced, her voice carrying effortlessly through the hall, "you will come forward, sit on the stool, and place the hat on your head. The hat will then sort you into your house." She unrolled the parchment, and Lily felt her hands begin to shake Dot. But before McGonagall could call the first name, the hat twitched. Then, to Lily's amazement, a rip near the brim opened like a mouth, and the hat began to sing. "1,000 years are near enough. I've sorted young and old, seen brave hearts break and cowards bluff. Watch shy ones become bold. Dot in Gryffindor, you'll find your place, if courage is your way. Though bravery isn't just a face, you show the world each day. For Hufflepuff, the loyal true, who work with steady hand, there's nothing that you cannot do. When friendship makes you stand. Dot in Ravenclaw, where wisdom dwells and curiosity thrives. The mind's own magic weaves its spells, and learning shapes your lives. Or Slytherin, ambitious, keen, where cunning finds its home. You'll be the greatest ever seen, no matter where you roam. But hear me well, you young and new, these houses are not walls. The choice of who you'll grow into is yours when courage calls. I've seen the bravest Slytherin, the cleverest Hufflepuff, the loyal ones in Gryffindor, the kind in Ravenclaw enough. These traits live not in one alone, but scattered, mixed, combined. So when I place you in your home, remember, choice and chance entwined." The hat fell silent, and for a moment, the hall was absolutely still. Then applause broke out, polite and traditional, and the hat gave a small bow before settling back into immobility. "Right then," McGonagall said, as though singing hats were the most natural thing in the world. "Ashworth, Timothy." A nervous boy with dark hair walked forward, nearly tripping over his own robes. The hat barely touched his head before shouting, "Hufflepuff," and the yellow-clad table erupted in cheers. "Bones, Susan." A girl with blonde hair walked forward with admirable composure. The hat took nearly a minute before declaring Ravenclaw, and the blue and bronze table applauded warmly. The sorting continued, each name called ratcheting Lily's anxiety up another notch. Some sortings were instant, the hat barely settling before shouting its decision. Others took longer, the hat seeming to debate with itself, or perhaps with the student beneath. Boot, Derek, Ravenclaw, Branstone, Margaret, Gryffindor, and James's table roared approval. Clearwater, Marcus, Ravenclaw, Finch Fletchley, Robert, Hufflepuff, joining another legacy student with evident relief. Lily tried to focus on individual sortings, but her mind kept wandering, kept playing out scenarios. What if the hat couldn't decide? What if it saw nothing in her worth sorting? What if Goldstein, Sarah? The hall went noticeably quieter. Goldstein was another old family name, though not one weighted with the same dark history as Malfoy or Lestrange. The girl who walked forward looked nervous but determined. The hat took its time before declaring Hufflepuff, and the yellow table cheered with particular enthusiasm. Greengrass, Astoria. A small girl with pale blonde hair walked forward, her posture very straight. The hat barely touched her head before announcing Slytherin, and she joined the green and silver table with visible relief. Jordan Lee, a boy with dreadlocks clearly related to the famous Lee Jordan, who'd been friends with Lily's uncles, bounded forward. Gryffindor, the hat declared immediately, and the red and gold table exploded with cheers. Longbottom, Edmund. Edmund went very pale. He walked forward on shaking legs, and Lily saw Professor Longbottom lean forward at the teacher's table, his expression hopeful and worried in equal measure. The hat sat on Edmund's head for nearly 2 minutes, long enough that whispers began to ripple through the hall. Edmund's hands gripped the edges of the stool, his knuckles white. Finally, the hat opened its brim and called out Hufflepuff. The yellow and black table erupted with enthusiasm, and Lily saw Professor Longbottom's face split into an enormous grin. Edmund walked toward his new house, looking dazed but relieved, and was immediately swept into welcoming hugs. The sorting continued. More names, more students finding their places. The hall was growing restless now, hungry and tired, wanting this traditional ceremony to be finished so the feast could begin. Macmillan, Ernie, Hufflepuff, Nott, Theodore, Slytherin, Patel, Shreya, Ravenclaw, joining what must be a cousin or sibling already at that table. Potter, Lily. The hall went completely silent. It was different from the quiet that had greeted other famous names. This was anticipation rather than judgment, curiosity rather than suspicion. Everyone knew who Harry Potter was. Everyone knew the story. And everyone wanted to see where his youngest child would be sorted. Lily's feet moved without her conscious input, carrying her toward the stool. She was hyper-aware of everything. The coolness of the stone floor beneath her feet, the weight of hundreds of eyes on her, the way James's entire table leaned forward expectantly, the way Albus looked worried, the way her father's friends among the teachers were watching with obvious interest. She sat. The stool was still warm from the last student. Professor McGonagall lifted the hat, and for just a moment before she placed it on Lily's head, the headmistress gave her the smallest nod, so slight Lily might have imagined it. But it said, "You'll be fine." Then the hat descended over her eyes, and the great hall vanished into darkness. "Ah," said a small voice in her ear, dry and ancient and amused. "Another Potter. How delightful. Though you're different from your brothers, aren't you?" Lily's thoughts raced. Please just decide quickly. Please don't make me sit here forever while everyone watches. Patience, my dear, the hat said. This is important. Can't rush it just because you're nervous. Now, let's see what we have here. Lily felt something brushing through her mind, not invasive. More like gentle fingers sorting through a library, looking for the right book. Interesting, the hat murmured. Very interesting indeed. You have your father's courage, certainly, but it manifests differently. Not the charging into danger type, but the standing firm when everything else falls type. That's valuable. Am I brave enough for Gryffindor? Lily thought desperately. Brave enough? Child, you've spent 11 years living in Harry Potter's shadow, and you're still standing. That takes a particular kind of courage. But there's more to you than bravery. The hat paused, considering. You have your mother's determination, that Weasley fire that doesn't quit. And you have something else, ... A gift for seeing people as they are rather than as others expect them to be. That's wisdom, Miss Potter. Real wisdom, not just cleverness. Please not Slytherin, Lily thought, and immediately felt guilty. Scorpius Malfoy was in Slytherin. Her cousin Albus had friends there. It wasn't a bad house, just weighted with history that isn't yours to carry. The hat finished her thought. But you're right to be wary. Slytherin would challenge you in ways you're not ready for. Not because you couldn't thrive there, but because you need something different right now. Where do I belong? Lily asked silently, and realized it was the most honest question she had. Ah, the hat said softly. Now that's the right question. Not where others think you should go, not where your name would suggest, but where will you flourish? Where will you find your people, your purpose? The hat hummed thoughtfully, and Lily could almost feel it weighing options, considering possibilities. You could be great in Gryffindor, continuing the family tradition, surrounded by courage and daring. You could shine in Ravenclaw. That mind of yours is sharper than you realize. You could thrive in Hufflepuff, that loyalty, that capacity for seeing worth in others. Those are Hufflepuff traits through and through. So where? Lily thought, almost pleading now. Where do I go? Where you'll be challenged to grow in ways you need, the hat replied. Where you'll learn that different doesn't mean wrong. Where you'll forge your own identity separate from your family's legacy. Where you'll prove to yourself, not to anyone else. To yourself, that Lily Potter is her own person with her own strengths. The hat's voice rose, addressing the hall once more. Ravenclaw. The hat lifted from Lily's head, and sound crashed over her like a wave. The Ravenclaw table had erupted not just in applause, but in genuine roaring celebration. Students were on their feet, some banging their goblets against the table, others whistling and cheering. Lily stumbled toward the blue and bronze table in a daze. She was a Ravenclaw, not Gryffindor like everyone expected, not following in her family's footsteps, making her own path. Hands reached out to welcome her older students, patting her back, congratulating her, making space for her to sit. A prefect with kind eyes and dark skin guided her to a seat near the middle of the table. Brilliant, the prefect said warmly. I'm Aisha Spinnet. Welcome to Ravenclaw. Lily nodded mutely, still processing. She looked toward the Gryffindor table and caught James's eye. Her oldest brother looked shocked, and his face split into a grin, and he gave her an enthusiastic thumbs up. Albus looked surprised too, but also oddly proud. At the teacher's table, Professor Longbottom was clapping enthusiastically, and several other teachers were smiling. McGonagall's expression was unreadable, but not disapproving. The sorting continued, pulling Lily's attention back to the stool. Pruitt, Morgan. Molly's sorting. Lily leaned forward, invested now in her new friend's fate. The hat took barely 30 seconds before declaring Hufflepuff, and Molly looked thrilled, practically skipping toward the yellow and black table where Edmund was already saving her a seat. Rosier, Dominic, Slytherin, Shacklebolt, Maya, Gryffindor, and the red and gold table cheered for the goddaughter of a former minister of magic. Smith, Oliver, Hufflepuff, Turpin, Eloise, Ravenclaw, and she joined Lily's table to warm applause. Weasley, Molly. Lily had momentarily forgotten there were two Mollys among the first years. This Molly Weasley. The second walked forward with the same nervous energy that seemed to define the Weasley Granger Potter clan. The hat took its time. nearly 2 minutes passing before calling out Hufflepuff. The yellow table erupted with particular enthusiasm, and Lily saw Hugo Weasley, Molly's cousin, leap to his feet to welcome her. The Weasley family was spreading out across the houses, now no longer just Gryffindor's exclusive domain. Wood, Oliver, Gryffindor, another legacy student joining his expected house. Zabini, Amara. Lily felt her heart clench. Amara walked forward with her chin high, her posture perfect. But Lily could see the tension in her shoulders, could see how tightly her hands were clenched at her sides. The hall had gone quieter, not silent like it had for Lily, but noticeably less noisy. The Zabini name carried weight, memories, expectations that weren't fair to place on an 11-year-old, but existed nonetheless. Amara sat on the stool. McGonagall placed the hat on her head, and it sat there. And sat there. The seconds stretched into a minute, then two. The whispers started speculation, old prejudices rising like ghosts. Lily found herself holding her, breath silently willing the hat to be kind, to see Amara for who she was rather than who her father had been. 3 minutes passed. Amara's hands were white-knuckled against the wooden stool. The hat seemed to be having an intense internal debate. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the hat opened its brim and called out, Ravenclaw. The blue and bronze table applauded, perhaps not as enthusiastically as they had for Lily, but warmly enough. Amara walked toward them with her head still high, and Lily immediately scooted over to make room beside her. We're in the same house, Amara breathed as she sat, and Lily heard relief and gratitude and wonder all mixed together in those 4 words. We're in the same house, Lily confirmed, grinning. And it's perfect. The sorting concluded quickly. After that, a few more students finding their houses, the alphabet finally exhausted. Professor McGonagall rolled up her parchment, and the sorting hat was carried away by a house elf. The headmistress stood, and the hall settled into expectant silence. Welcome, she said, her voice carrying to every corner of the great hall, to another year at Hogwarts. To our new students, welcome to your new home. To our returning students, welcome back. She paused, her expression stern but not unkind. Before we begin our feast, I have a few notices. The Forbidden Forest remains, as its name suggests, forbidden to all students. Mr. Filch has asked me to remind you that magic in the corridors is prohibited, and that the list of banned items has been updated. It's posted on his office door for those curious enough to check. A ripple of laughter ran through the hall. Quidditch trials will be held in the 2nd week of term. Anyone interested in playing for their house team should contact Madam Hoach. And finally, McGonagall's expression softened slightly. I want to remind all of you that Hogwarts is more than just a school. It is a community. You will spend the next 7 years here, living alongside people from different backgrounds, different beliefs, different houses. I expect you to treat each other with respect and kindness, regardless of the colors you wear. Her eyes swept across the hall, lingering perhaps a moment longer on the Slytherin table. The war ended 27 years ago. Many of you are children or grandchildren of those who fought in it. But you are not responsible for your parents' choices, good or ill. You are responsible only for your own. Make wise ones. The hall was absolutely silent, the weight of her words settling over them like snowdot. Then McGonagall smiled a rare, genuine smile that transformed her stern features. Now let us eat. She clapped her hands once, and the golden plates before them filled with food. Lily gasped. She'd seen magic her entire life, had grown up with floating dishes and self-stirring spoons and garden gnomes that had to be physically removed from the flower beds. But this was something else entirely. The plates overflowed with every kind of food imaginable. Roast beef and roast chicken and roast pork, each perfectly cooked and glistening with juices. Boiled potatoes and roast potatoes and mashed potatoes swimming in gravy. Yorkshire puddings and peas and carrots and parsnips. Oats of gravy and cranberry sauce. Pumpkin pasties and treacle tart and chocolate eclairs and apple pie. Jugs of pumpkin juice and butterbeer and water appeared at intervals down the table. "This is incredible," Lily breathed. "First feast?" Arisha Spinnet asked, already loading her plate with enthusiasm. "It's always the best. The house elves outdid themselves this year." Lily filled her plate, suddenly ravenous. She hadn't eaten properly since the pumpkin pasties on the train, and that felt like a lifetime ago. The food was extraordinarily better than any feast at home, better than any restaurant. There was magic in it somehow, beyond the obvious enchantments that kept everything hot and fresh. Around her, conversations bloomed like flowers. The older Ravenclaws peppered the first years with questions about the sorting, about their summers, about their interests. The first years asked about classes and professors, and whether the library really was as magnificent as the rumors suggested. "It is," a fifth-year boy said enthusiastically. "The restricted section alone could keep you busy for years. Though Madame Pants doesn't let first years in there. You have to prove you're responsible first." "How do you prove that?" Eloise Turpin asked. "By not being caught breaking any major rules for at least a term," the boy replied with a grin. "Or by having a professor vouch for you. Professor Flitwick's usually good for that, if you show genuine interest in a topic." Lily caught Amara's eye, and they both smiled. They were Ravenclaws now. The library would be theirs to explore, to lose themselves in, to discover things that even their well-read families might not know. Down the table, she could see other first years settling in. A girl with curly hair was engaged in what appeared to be an intense discussion about transfiguration theory with a seventh year. Two boys who'd sorted into Ravenclaw early were comparing their wands, examining the wooden cores with scientific fascination. At the Gryffindor table, James was holding court with his friends, laughing about something. Albus sat with his own group, more reserved but looking content. At Hufflepuff, Edmund and both Mollys had found each other and were deep in conversation with their housemates. And at Slytherin, Lily spotted several first years being welcomed by older students with what appeared to be genuine warmth. The feast continued course after course, appearing and disappearing as plates were cleared. The desserts alone were worth the entire journey. Treacle tart and chocolate eclairs and ice. Cream in every flavor imaginable. And something called butterbeer pudding that made Lily's eyes roll. Back in her head, good, isn't it? Aisha laughed at her expression. Wait until you try the Christmas feast. They really go all out then. This isn't all out? Lily managed around another spoonful. This is Tuesday for Hogwarts, Isha replied with a grin as the feast wound down. The noise level in the hall rose to something approaching cacophony. 400 students, all talking and laughing and getting reacquainted after the summer, created a sound that was almost overwhelming. But underneath it, Lily could hear something else a-hum. Like the castle itself was content. Professor McGonagall stood again, and gradually the noise subsided. "Now that we are all fed and watered," she said, "I have just a few more announcements. First years should note that the library is available during the day, but closes at 8 o'clock. Madam Pants takes a dim view of students who abuse the privilege of library access." She continued with various logistical details when classes started: where to find schedules, how the password system worked for common rooms. Lily tried to pay attention, but found her mind drifting, exhaustion finally catching up with her. "And now," McGonagall concluded, "it is time to bid you good night. Prefects, please lead the first years to their dormitories. Everyone else off to bed. We have a long year ahead of us." The hall erupted into the scraping of benches and the shuffling of feet. Aisha stood and raised her voice. "First-year Ravenclaws, over here, please." Lily and Amara stood. Along with the other new Ravenclaws, all told, there were 10 of them. 10 new threads in a tapestry that stretched back 1,000 years as they filed out of the great hall. Lily looked back one more time. The enchanted ceiling showed stars wheeling in their ancient patterns. The 4 house tables were emptying, students heading to their respective towers and dungeons. She caught Edmund's eye across the crowd, and he waved. Molly blew her a kiss. Even from this distance, Lily could feel the promise they'd made to each other holding strong. Tomorrow, they would be students together, learning magic and making mistakes and figuring out who they were meant to become. Tonight, they were just tired 11-year-olds ready for bed. But first, Lily had to find her way to Ravenclaw Tower. Isha led them out of the great hall and toward the marble staircase. "Keep up," she called, "and try to remember the route. The castle doesn't make it easy, but you'll get the hang of it eventually." "Eventually?" one of the first-year boys asked nervously. "Give it a week. Maybe 2. Possibly 3 for the really directionally challenged ones." Aisha grinned over her shoulder. "Don't worry. We've never actually lost anyone permanently." "That's not as reassuring as you think it is," Amara muttered, and several first years laughed. They climbed the marble staircase and entered the castle proper. And Lily felt her exhaustion warring with wonder. Every corridor held something new: a portrait, a suit of armor, a tapestry depicting some ancient battle. The castle was alive with magic and history, and she was part of it now, part of something bigger than herself, bigger than her name, bigger than anyone's expectations. A Ravenclaw. The thought settled in her chest like a small warm coal, and she smiled despite her tiredness. This was home now. This was where her story would unfold, and tomorrow, it would truly begin. But tonight, there was only the gentle climb toward Ravenclaw Tower, the soft chatter of new housemates, and the promise of a comfortable bed waiting at the end of a very long, very magical day. The castle's many clocks began to chime midnight as they climbed, their bells echoing through corridors and classrooms, marking the passage from September 1st to September 2nd. The first day was complete. The real magic was about to begin, and somewhere in the depths of the library, in a restricted section guarded by ancient spells, books that hadn't been opened in decades began to hum with anticipation, sensing the arrival of new minds hungry for knowledge, new students ready to unlock secrets that had waited patiently for the right readers to find them. The stars wheeled on, eternal and unchanging, and Hogwarts kept its silent watch as it had for 1,000 years, as it would for 1,000 more.